Welcome everybody to our sustainability webinar. My name is Rick Ciordia. I will be your host for the day. I'm an independent consultant engineer, designer with over 30 years experience in the telecommunications, smart grid, and critical infrastructure industries. I've held positions with organizations in the like of Lockheed Martin, Verizon, Puerto Rico Telephone, WorldNet Telecommunications, Puerto Rico Electrical Power Authority, and Luma. Please let me introduce our guest speakers. Jacques Flouet, Global Director, Data Center Program, TIA. Working for TIA during the last 5 years, Jacques has been involved in the evolution of the data centers and the overall data center industry. Prior to joining TIA, Jacques accumulated 30 years of telecommunications industry experience in wireless, wireline, and optical networks. He held various leadership positions in the engineering teams of Nortel and Ericsson. In his current role, Jacques works for industry working groups that are responsible for the development and evolution of the TIA 942 standard, and he leads the TIA Data Center Certification Program. Manuel Wexler, Executive Director, AKFI. Manuel is a seasoned technology and business leader with a strong background in sustainability, ESG, and digital transformation. Currently, he serves as instructor of record at Cornell University and executive director of AKFI, an industry association closing the gap between sustainability and digital transformation for the supply chain. He co-hosts the Actionable ESG Talk series, a weekly broadcast on current sustainability and ESG challenges. With a Master of Science in Biomedical Electronic Engineering from the Yashi University and multiple certifications from Cornell University, University of Toronto, and Queen's University, Canada, Manuel has held high-level positions at Huawei, Cisco Systems, and AMD, earning awards for his exceptional executive training delivery. We're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we start, I'd like to take a moment to go over some of the housekeeping rules to ensure a smooth and engaging experience for everybody. Please use the Q&A function. Throughout the webinar, we encourage you to use the Q&A features for any questions or comments. At the end of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session to answer your questions. Please note that this session is being recorded. For those who want a copy of this presentation, please send a message over the chat window and our team will send it via email in the next week. If you need subtitles, depending on the Zoom version you are connecting from, you can activate captions option in other languages. Thank you for your attention. We appreciate your attendance and look forward to an engaging and productive session together. Without further ado, let's get started with our presentation led by Jacques Flouet. Jacques.
Thank you very much, Rick. I'll share my slides. Okay, welcome everyone. First, the subject of this webinar is really about sustainable mission critical facilities. So let's start with first, what does it mean to be mission critical? Well, a mission critical facility, it's a building or infrastructure, and the key points here is that they're essential for important operations, services, or systems to function. And what makes them critical is that there's severe negative consequences if there's a problem, okay, ranging from financial losses to public safety risks. So examples of those types of mission critical facilities, data centers, which I'm involved with every day, hospitals, emergency response centers, military installations, financial institutions, utilities, and probably many more. Okay, things that can be very, very disruptive to our day-to-day life. Sustainability. Okay, I found this particular definitions from the Penn State Sustainability Institute that I thought covered pretty much what it was. And if you can read it here, it's like sustainability is the simultaneous pursuit of human health and happiness, environmental quality, and economic well-being for current and future generations. So it covers, not only the environment, but also, human health and happiness, that is very important, and also the economic well-being. And this not only for now, but also thinking about what's happening in the future. So this is kind of something that we have to keep in mind all the time, and it provides challenges. The few things here that we have to balance in our day-to-day life when you work with mission critical or sustainability is that the mission critical facility, it's all about reliability, resiliency, security, and performance. You have to have something that is extremely reliable, that can recover from problems very, very quickly, that is extremely secure, and also provides a very, very good level of performance, because low performance is pretty much the same thing as a downtime. Sustainability, it's right now there's a huge focus around the globe on carbon emission, but it's also about the recycling. So basically waste management. You don't want to have too much waste. It's resource utilization as well. Being very efficient in using your energy, your water, and also all the equipment that you have. You don't want to have a lot of idle equipment with basically created carbon emission when it was built and shipped and everything. So you want to be extremely efficient in everything you're using. There's also regulations that you have to take into account. Sustainability is in many countries, most of the countries have objective on carbon emissions. Most of the big companies also have targets for carbon emissions, and also for other types of sustainability as we define up there. But also there's privacy rules in most regions of the world. A lot of data cannot get out of the country. And there's all kinds of security that you have for health records and financial records and all of those things. Security is extremely important. Noise. We're starting to see a lot of issues or concerns with noise as you build high power mission critical facility in the cities where you have a lot of fans to cool everything down, and that makes a lot of noise, and aesthetics as well. On data centers, we're starting to see that as people don't want to have this ugly building near their neighborhood. So all of this becomes part of regulations that you have to manage for on top of having the rest of the requirements. And last but not least, all the user expectations. The users are expecting availability for all the services from the mission critical facilities. They're expecting a high quality of service, quality of experience, a high level of privacy, security, but also a manageable cost, something they can afford. Okay, because it's very easy to meet the first three if you have no problem with cost, but at the end, somebody has to pay for it. So it's extremely important also to be able to manage it in an affordable manner. So we have to balance all of those things accordingly to be in the right spot when we design a new mission critical facility. So sustainability right now, some of the critical considerations is for the sustainability is renewable energy. Okay, we want to get out of the carbon emissions, minimizing water consumption. As we're finding out, especially in data centers, for example, the cooling of all this IT equipment uses a lot of water. So they want to minimize the amount of water, as most of the cities in many parts of the world, water is became scarce, and it's under a lot of control. So you want to minimize your water consumption. Also minimize the negative impact on the environment for the whole life cycle of the facility, from the construction to, at the end, the decommissioning of the facility. So how can you manage all of that and making sure you design for sustainability as well? And then throughout the operations of the facility, an efficient resource management. For the mission critical side, it's all about, high level of redundancy, power, cooling, telecoms, even physical access. You have to have redundancy because you have to be up and running all the time. So you cannot, if anything fails, you have to be able to recover from this failure, and hopefully it should not even impact your operations. High level of security, both physical and cyber. This is extremely important as well. Site location, risk mitigation. We're finding out now with all those extreme environmental disaster that we have, that we got to manage the risk of the location. It cannot be in a flooded area. If you're building in a hurricane zones or tornado zones, you have to, make the facility extremely strong. You have to make sure that everything you have can handle those types of environmental events. Fire detection and suppression is also extremely important. You don't want to, you want to be able to isolate the fires and suppress it as fast as possible so it doesn't affect your facility. Disaster recovery plans, okay? Having backups in another location and being able to recover from this disaster. Extensive monitoring of all the equipment and the environment to make sure that you can hopefully have an early warning if something goes bad. Well-defined and monitored maintenance plan. Not wait until something fails before you start looking at what happened there. So being able to have an early maintain everything correctly so that everything works perfectly. And then well-trained staff. That's also a critical item in there. So all of those are the attributes of those two big requirements. Right now, we have challenges, okay? And so we have an increased dependency on mission critical facilities. There's a fast growth in the number of mission critical facilities around the world as new digital services are continually being created, and we continuously rely on them. In many cases now, manual process are no longer available, and there's no people that even would know how to do it. So we have to make sure that all the tools that we're using every day, all the internet services that we're using every day, keep on working all the time. Digital services adoption also is growing faster and faster. Just as an example, the old Netflix and Uber of this world took months and even years before they got to 1 million users. ChatGPT got to 1 million users in 5 days. So when you got a new digital service that people like, you need to be able to adapt to it very, very quickly. Increased power consumption. That's also a big challenge that we have right now. New technologies like AI, artificial intelligence and machine learning require very, very high power computing, very high power compute power with GPUs to run effectively. And we're talking about tens of thousands of GPUs in the case of most of the generative AI. So those need a lot of power and also a lot of cooling for all of this power. So that's increasing the overall power consumption of data centers, for example. And we have sustainability target. Most of the big companies want to be carbon neutral by 2030, between 2030 and 2050. So that's also a huge challenge, especially in light of this increased power consumption. And then energy efficiency targets, money industry have it, and data centers, we're talking about PUE, power usage effectiveness, CUE, carbon usage effectiveness, and WUE, water usage effectiveness. There's even many more, but those are the most commonly used that are very important. And in certain countries, they're starting to look at that and have the data center report on those metrics, for example. So that's extremely important to be able to manage and on those efficiency targets. And qualified shortages. with the baby boomers retiring and going away right now, we're starting to see a lot of qualified staff shortages and pretty much in a lot of the mission critical facilities, either in the IT part or in the mechanical part or the power part. Everything is in short staff right now. So there's that it's also puts a lot of pressure on those mission critical facilities. So what can we do? Okay. So in the mission critical facility, we know we have to have high availability. So there's also a lot of autonomy and redundancy. We're looking at using AI and other things to do predictive maintenance, being able to detect a degradation of equipment before they fail, so that you can schedule maintenance at the appropriate time that doesn't impact the service. Workload orchestration. We're starting to see people being able to move certain applications from one data center to the next or one site to another in case there's a risk on that particular site for either weather or for any any equipment problem. And the non-terrestrial network is another thing that is starting to happen. We're starting to see it for Internet of Things right now, all the IoT connectivity, but in the very near future, there are testing right now, and we'll be able to use our regular phone to access the low orbiting satellite. And then being able to have basically flying cell sites in the air that will keep us connected all the time. So that's also important when you are running mission critical, that you can be connected all the time. And qualified staffing. Advanced training programs are appearing everywhere. There's even a lot of subsidies right now by big companies to say to finance either all or a large portion of the training for people that want to get into that business. Increased automation, more and more things are targeting everything that can be automated is being looked at being automated. And also we're starting to see some AR assisted, augmented reality assisted operations. So people that can be helped in doing operations that they've not necessarily done before by having and by looking into either into glasses or through your phone to help you do the procedures. On the sustainability side, we have on the power source side, there's heavy investment on renewable energy right now. You see new, PPA power purchase agreements being signed for new solar systems, new wind turbines, everything that is pretty much carbon free, so that we can keep on continuing the growth. Bring your own power, BIOP. So a lot of places now, they cannot provide enough power fast enough, and they're saying, well, bring your own power if you really need it. So solar, wind, nuclear, even small, nuclear and small medium reactors. We're starting to see lots of announcements this year on technology trials and people signing contracts for that, and even geothermal when it's available. Efficient energy usage. So there's efficient indoor environment management, making sure that you run everything at the most efficient temperature and the most efficient relative humidity. Energy storage system. Also, especially when you use some of the solar and wind, for example, it's not running 24/7 all the time. So you need to have a place to be able to store energy. So there's a lot of work being done on energy storage system. The battery technologies are evolving very quickly, but people are looking at all kinds of other creative way to store energy so that they can reuse it when either the sun doesn't shine or the wind is not there. Efficient resources utilization. So, predictive maintenance, instead of being in a panic mode all the time to recover quickly from a problem, being able to say, hey, we need to do we need to potentially, work on this particular pump, on this particular piece of equipment and replace it before it fails. And you can schedule those maintenance at the right time so that it doesn't affect your services. Software controlled equipment and network. There's more and more of the network that is getting virtualized now, basically software running on servers. And because of that, as you're basically use cloud type of applications, then it's a lot easier to be able to control them by software, add capacity, remove capacity, reassign the applications to another server, and be able like that to adapt and reconfigure quickly to always keep the services running, but also to be extremely efficient in the use of your equipment instead of duplicating everything just in case. Utilization monitoring and optimization is also important. Making sure that you're not using, 50 pieces of equipment at 20%, which basically is using almost as much power as if you were using them at 100%. But be able to turn things off when you don't need them. So it's being done right now in telecom networks, and cell sites that's a technology that has been there for a few years now, turning off certain radios when you don't need them, and adding and returning them back on when the capacity need is there. So it's something that can be done. This being said, then I'd like to pass let Manuel speak to explain to you how does this fit in the overall picture of ESG. Go ahead, Manuel.
Very much. Thank you very much, Jacques, and thanks, Rick. Great review of the challenges and some of the solutions, Jacques. And I'll switch a little bit the conversation toward the two major areas: the regulations and the training necessary to understand and to apply sustainability in ESG. And I will turn on my presentation in a second. A little bit of computer delay here. And I'll start. My slides are not running for a second. Let me try to. Okay. So I don't know how many of you are following the European regulations regarding sustainability. What I would like to leave you with today is the fact that sustainability, it's actually not only a consideration for large companies or for companies that operate in Europe or in California, where the strictest sustainability rules are being put in place. What we see here, it's actually the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is the framework that the European community put in place, applies to all the supply chain, all the suppliers, regardless if they are in Latin America, in Asia, in Europe, or in the US. They have to comply with the regulations if they operate or they deliver products and goods and services in Europe. So I would like you to keep this in mind, because this connects with the need for sustainability, education, awareness, for certifications. And as you have seen from Jacques, there are many areas that requires really updating from a security or upskilling from a security viewpoint and from a sustainability viewpoint in the same time. I'll go very quickly, and for the people that know ESG or they want to learn about it, it really refers to environmental, social, and governance. And it really covers, when you look at the environment, Jacques already covered the resource utilization, the energy efficiency, waste management and the pollution. He talked about the noise pollution of the data centers and sort of their not being welcome in cities as being big blocks of concrete, actually, as well as bio-waste handling, as well as I mentioned, the climate change mitigation, things like floods and tornadoes. The social are covering the labor practices, the employee relations, child labor. Very important for our industry, telecom and IT, cybersecurity and data privacies are captured in the social aspects of the ESG. Governance comes at the forefront. Governance is the corporate governance, is the business ethics. It is the way the board of directors, the executives, the CEO, the CFO act in protecting not only the shareholders, but the stakeholders. There's the population around the operations. These are the employees. These are the families of the employees. These are the communities where people live and work. And as Jacques already mentioned, there is a tight relationship and the relevance to the mission critical facilities linked to 24/7 operations, linked to responsible practices, and balancing the needs of critical infrastructure with environmental and social responsibilities. So if anything you can take from here, complexities, it's on the rise. I would go relatively quickly on the common ESG taxonomies and standards. This is a very short list. There are probably over 100 standards and taxonomies. I'll talk about some of them later also in the presentation. One of the most used is the Global Reporting Initiative. It's a comprehensive and industry specific or categories of industry specific standards. The other one, the pair of the GRI, if you want, is the SASB, or the Sustainable Accounting Standards Board. I'll talk a little bit later about double materiality and where the standards fit into the financial reporting of companies. Very important is the Task Force for Climate related financial disclosures, Carbon Disclosure Project, and last but not least, the EU taxonomy, CSRD that I mentioned earlier. And I want to stress here that there is a need for awareness in Latin America. Do not be tricked by the idea that this is just an European standard. It is a global standard that affects, as I mentioned, the entire supply chain. I think Jacques also already talked about some of the metrics. I'll just go and talk about the energy consumption and efficiency, which is one of the major standards or one of the major elements in sustainability and ESG. The level of emissions, we touch on waste management. We talked about water usage, especially in the context of increased utilization of data centers due to AI and heavy use of NVIDIA GPUs. Social metrics, labor practices, human rights, the amount of compensation, providing equal compensation for men and women, for instance, and something that touches us directly and very on a daily basis, if you want, is the cybersecurity and data privacy that we need to really engage from a sustainability viewpoint, as well as from a legal viewpoint, as well as from the viewpoint of critical mission activities. Governance metrics, board structure and ethics, companies, for instance, in northern countries, Sweden, Norway, are now asked to have at least 40% women in the board of directors, for instance. Transparency and disclosures. This is an area that demands a lot of attention because the data that is provided in sustainability, in ESG reporting, has to be auditable. Risk management, this says it all. This is really about mission critical. And last but not least, the compensation and executive compensation. I'm going to switch a little bit and to the US and look at US specific standards and initiatives. You may be very familiar with LEED or LEED. I see this sign now all over Latin America, LEED compliant buildings. There are different levels of compliance that goes back to certification and the process of auditing. The ASHRAE standards, if you want, for system critical for HVAC efficiency and system critical cybersecurity framework, the National Institute of Standards and Technology in the US at the social aspects of ESG standards, EPA for environmental laws. And what we need to really take out of this slide is really the emphasis on emission reductions, on energy efficiency, and on sustainable operations. Those come really strong into the operations of regular IT infrastructure as well as mission. Earlier, I mentioned double materiality. We can spend at least an hour to discuss it, but here I just want to leave you with a picture, with a model of what really double materiality is. Double materiality is at the core of sustainability reporting, of ESG reporting in CSRD and in California in the US. Regulation is also coming up in the US Security and Exchange Commission. And the way to look at double materiality, I'm sure that many of you are familiar with financial reporting. This is 100+ years methodology to report on the finance of private companies, privately traded companies, I should say. What we added with our sustainability metrics, we call it impact materiality. If you want to look from a system viewpoint, the financial materiality is how the financial industry and the investors can look inside the company and find about its financial health. The impact materiality is how the company looks at the environment of operation. This is new, not totally new, but this comes now integrated under the sustainability and ESG consideration. I mentioned already the Security and Exchange Commission. One other element in double materiality is the view of the stakeholders. Let me explain here. Companies, privately owned companies that are on the stock exchange, especially, they have shareholders. And shareholders' primacy is a principle that is maybe 55, 60 years old. So all the operations of the companies are to support the material conditions of the shareholders. In other words, return shareholders' value. Starting about 10 years ago, we started to look at the companies from a stakeholder perspective. This is their employees. This is the community they operate, I mentioned. These are the people that are indirectly affected by the company. And very important, and I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the supply chain and the way they work with the supply chain. So stakeholders' expectations now are coming at the forefront of the double materiality. And last but not least, I advise companies to start earlier to think about the double materiality, even if they are not required today to report on sustainability. It is a great tool to understand for the boards of directors, for the executives, for the people involved in sustainability operations, to understand the implications of their activities. And to pause here, this gives you a tool to increase efficiency. Many times I hear from people I work with, for instance, in Cornell, that sustainability is expensive. It is expensive because if you look as only a cost for providing these great services, reducing the amount of carbon footprint, for instance, it is expensive. Now, if you look at procuring, for instance, renewable energy, installing solar panels, and you realize that it's actually a benefit for the company to use renewable energy. So I encourage you to look from a system viewpoint at the materiality impact of the sustainability. And again, Jacques discussed many elements of sustainability. I encourage you to review his slides. Moving to Latin America, there are a number of activities that we noticed there. There is the Latin American Green Building Council, similar to LEEDs that I mentioned before. ISO is coming up with a number of standards, 14,001, 14,000 series, has environmental management systems. Different countries in Latin America are setting national policies and regulations for sustainability. There are countries specific. So again, I encourage you to review what is in discussion in local legislations, parliaments, and so on. There are sustainable infrastructure initiatives focusing on sustainable development projects like energy and transportation. And finally, but definitely important, are regional challenges that are specific to each country. Some countries are rich in water, some countries are poor in water. Some countries have a very hot climate, and that requires a lot of energy for cooling, for instance, for mission critical systems. I will talk a little bit about metrics. This is for people primarily that are already thinking or are in the process to start reporting, connected to the supply chain, to the value chain, to start reporting on the performance in the sustainability metrics. There are environmental strategies, for instance, effective biowaste management systems, water conservation. There are social strategies. I probably said it already 5 times, but I'll repeat it. Cybersecurity, it's at the core of sustainability when we look at the IT and mission critical environments. We talked about the government. One particular area is the healthcare. Healthcare has special rules regarding biowaste, disposal systems, waste collection. There is toxic waste. There is waste that has to be very carefully treated because it can have pathogens or very active, like radioactive substances. When we look really at the emergency response centers, it's really important to have redundancy, as we've seen in the first part of the presentations, to protect the critical communication systems. Double, triple considering different scenarios of power and power failures and unreliable power. So I would like to move on to draw some conclusions. First thing about what I would recommend you to take away from this presentation, and again, thank you for attending. Understand ESG terms and metrics is crucial. There are many education programs now, from a couple of hours self-directed to very involved certification programs that may take weeks and months of training regarding ESG metrics and how to measure them, how to report on them. Mission critical facilities, we don't need to repeat it. They are really at the forefront of ESG objectives. And cybersecurity and bio-waste management, as I mentioned recently, are essential components of ESG in these facilities. A call to action. First thing, and I'm sure you've heard it and you've seen it many times, industry has to collaborate. Sustainability is not a standalone act. You cannot be sustainable in the environment. You got floods and hurricanes because of corruption of the environment. And adopt standards. Adopt standards early. Some of the standards may take years to implement, collect data, and report on. So there are many of these standards I mentioned before in the context of CSRD, of the reporting for financials. They may take years of data accumulation. So a subtitle of that, know where data is. Make sure that you have a very good digital transformation and very good data storage and data analysis capabilities. And keep working on it, continuous improvement. So to conclude, I'll just want to introduce really quickly the AKFI. We have a global mission. We are a non-profit. We are an industry association with a global mission to relentlessly create standards and best practices and actionable knowledge for sustainability. Specifically, we're focusing on the supply chain. To many companies that I'm sure are here today or will listen later to these presentations. Mission critical, again, is at the forefront. It's a members-based community in the collaboration association. And I would invite you to learn more about it on LinkedIn. Finally, I just want to mention that among many other organizations and in cooperation with LATAM RED, we provide an ESG fundamental certified program. And I'll turn it back to Rick.
Thank you, Manuel. That was a great presentation. Thank you, Jax. Before we move on to Q&A, very important is, why is sustainability education important, right? So as we navigate the challenges of climate change, social inequities, and the need for greater energy resources due to digital transformation, the need for sustainable practices becomes increasingly urgent. Education plays an important role in this evolution. AKFI sustainability certified education programs are designed to equip individuals with the knowledge and tools essential to tackle these critical issues. So we exhort you, if you're in the IT industry and you're looking to expand your knowledge about sustainability, the ESGF training will be the perfect fit to gain knowledge applied to this industry. Feel free to contact LATAM RED, AKFI partner in LATAM, for more information. You can also leave a message on the chat for our team to get back to you. Now, let's get the nitty-gritty of the questions and answer, guys. We're picking some questions here. I'll start with I'll start with Manuel. Can you elaborate on the concept of double materiality and its significance in the context of ESG and sustainability standards in US and LATAM?
Absolutely. If you want to really hit the core of sustainability, it boils down to, like any other human activity, to investments and return on investment. And until now, we made in what I may call it simple materiality, the concept of ROI is the driving return on investment, is the core of accounting and auditing and reporting on the company's performance, right? You just open a radio, open a streaming, and you'll hear today this company reported that their profit increased by X%. And this is ROI, return on investment. What happens with double materiality is really we take the same frameworks we apply to materiality, which means collecting data, reporting on the data on standard formats, and have the data publicly available, auditable. Now you'll say, well, I'm a private company, I'm privately held, and I don't need to report on materiality. The reality is when you come to sustainability reporting and you are part of the supply chain, you'll help the top of that supplier, your customer, to report on materiality. So you still have to have this data, even if you don't make it publicly because you are a private company. So to summarize, double materiality is applying all the concepts of materiality, of reporting, of financial reporting, now to environmental, to social and governance report, ESG. And thank you, Rick.
Well, thank you very much. Jack, here's a question for you. What is the impact of AI on sustainability?
Thanks, Rick. Good questions. The first impact of AI on sustainability is it's a challenge for many of the companies, especially for the data center and IT industry that have to add more capacity to the network, add more capacity to the data centers, especially high computing capacity. And this really means a lot more power. Okay, and by being forced to add more, consume more power in their data center, then that's kind of challenging to find enough sustainable power to meet all of those this high demand. But they're doing the best, and they're investing a lot in renewable power to create more production of renewable energy. But on the other side of things, though, AI can also help, okay, by being able to manage the data centers, manage the IT networks, manage everywhere where this additional power is required to optimize the use of this energy. And that's really, I think, where you see both. Like a short term, it's kind of a challenge. Longer term, I think AI will also help more globally to have a better use of energy in pretty much every types of buildings all over the place. So, short term, a problem. Longer term, I think it's part of the solution.
Follow-up question, Jack. Does preventive maintenance and planning play a big role?
It plays a big role in keeping your mission-critical facility up and running. Okay, being able to maintain correctly will also help a little bit with the energy consumption, because if everything is running cleanly, it typically uses less energy. But predictive maintenance is going to be extremely important if you can to be able to maintain the mission critical facility at peak level to provide their services without overusing energy, without overusing all kinds of resources and even equipment that you have in your facility.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Manuel, got a question for you. How are ESG metrics integrated into mission critical facilities, and what are the challenges involved in the process?
Thank you, Rick. Yes, great. And again, question which begs a much longer answer that we can provide in this time. But I would start by saying that actually mission critical is at the forefront of sustainability. Because really, if you look from a social, I mentioned the stakeholders, for instance, preserving human life, it's, if you want, one common element of all mission critical parts and factors in. So before even we started to talk about sustainability and ESG, mission critical was said to preserve human life, was said to help the environment, was help to mitigate floods and hurricanes, was said to help people with healthcare and emergencies. So these elements now need to be rethought, if you want, and reformatted, if I can use, in data that it's available and it's easy to understand from the ESG metrics and regulations. But really, the way I see it, mission critical is now part of the ESG movement. I think Jacques also mentioned the advent of AI and how AI can, in the short term, produce a sustainability challenge, or in the long term can help with the sustainability, can help with mission critical implementation of mission critical actions. So ESG is really tied into the mission critical. And by the way, by saying that, I don't want to diminish its importance in all the other industrial activities, starting with IT, but going in manufacturing and services. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Quite interesting. Jack, I got a question here. It says, how are standards helping build sustainable mission critical facilities?
Well, I think standards are a reflection of the best practices of the industry. And the idea there is to be able to, reuse those best practices. So that's one of the things that TIE is basically, it's pretty much a standard development organization. So it's kind of a reunion of committees of subject matter experts from the industries that are looking at how can we have something we all agree on as the basis for design of mission critical facilities, for example. So it's all about taking into account industry best practices, and since in the industry best practices there's concerns about sustainability, so it's most of our standards, especially the ones on data centers, which I'm more familiar with, have a lot of considerations about how to be efficient in the energy you are using, which is pretty much where the industry is today, but it's starting to look also at how to build, but the standards are not there yet. They're being looked at, but I haven't seen one yet on how it is built and how it is at the end decommissioned in a sustainable way. But at least for the operation part, there's a lot of components in the standard, and because it's really the critical part today. But it's as everything else, standards are evolving, and I wish that I hope that in the next version of the standard we'll have a little bit wider considerations for pretty much all the aspects of sustainability.
It really is a dynamic thing, ain't it?
It is. It is. But best practices, by including the best practices, you pretty much, if anybody wants to follow a standard, and that's, I would suggest, one of the best way to start from if you're designing a new data centers, because You won't have to invent everything from a blank sheet. It's going to give you a first kind of a vision of what the requirements for your data center is, and then you adapt it according to your needs. But at least it gives you a very strong basis, and you don't, and it's going to make sure you consider all aspects of it, including sustainability.
Oh, thank you. Got a few more questions here. Getting close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to try to move it along. Appreciate the tying everything up with the standards. So I'm going to ask Manuel, it's how does AKFI bridge the gap between digital transformation, AI, and ESG? And can you share any success stories?
Absolutely, and thank you. First thing we identified, and I think when Jacques explained about the role of AI, this is a very good example of how the need for an organization, for an industry association came about to set standards and best practices to be followed by the industry, and how to leverage the digitalization, the digital transformation, which it's by now, I think, a 10 years plus movement in transforming the companies. How to connect it with sustainability strategies, with sustainability reporting. And this is where we position AKFI as an industry association. If you want a simple way, it's a meeting place for people and companies to create these standards and best practices, and be focusing on the role of the supply chain, because this is in many cases an afterthought in reporting, in collecting data, in setting strategies. So you set a strategy for carbon footprint, for instance, for a company, and you forget that 80–90% of the carbon footprint comes from your suppliers. And then you have to call them and say, help me, because I can report only 10% progress. So that's where the association is. Thank you.
Thank you. I am going to ask this question here for both of you, right? Get both of your feedback here. But listening to the presentations and the answers to the questions, the question would be, with all the fast changes going on and many organizations involved directly or indirectly, who is policing? Who's driving governance? Are end users to take control of compliance?
Up to a certain point, they are, okay? Because at the end, it all boils down to the end users. But I know that the industry wants to do their best to make sure that they meet a lot of the sustainability requirements. Industry is always a little concerned when governments get involved and invent new rules and new regulations that they have to follow. So they want to be able to show that they're very good citizens and they're taking it seriously. And I think that's one of the thing that Manuel talked about when in their ESG report, for example. You know, and most of the big companies now have an ESG component to their annual reports, and it's extremely important for them. The policy, I would say, is more like their public commitments that they have, and that's something that is also a key point. They've committed to numbers, and they're really pushing hard to achieve those numbers. And we've seen in some countries. I think Germany, for example, for the data center world that I'm more aware of, is that they've put some regulations on new data centers for certain what's their power usage effectiveness and what's their carbon usage effectiveness, and they're putting some requirements on data center. And I think overall in Europe they have a big, well, it's not a regulation yet, but they have initiatives around some of the big in the power consumer in the Europe to meet certain requirements of effectiveness in the energy they're using. But it's something that we're gonna see, we may see coming down in other places of the world, but so far, industry is doing their best to show that they're good citizens and they're able to regulate themselves and are very, very conscious of the environment and the sustainability. Manuel, do you have anything?
Yep. Thank you, Jacques. There are multiple ways to look at the company's governance. Regulatory, thank you, you mentioned already, and the frameworks. I want to mention that it's also a cultural aspect of regulatory. There is an ethical aspect. And to address also Rick's question, ultimately the consumers and the customers of those companies are the ones which regulate the behavior of the company. And there are many examples where, for instance, companies are hardly pressed by their employees. Walt Disney comes to mind in Florida to make a change, and then the regulators want a different change, and we see these dynamics. I guess this is a good sign because that means the environment is changing, ethics is coming at the forefront of the governance, and you cannot regulate ethics. We barely can define it. So I'll stop here by saying, governance is very complex. You don't want to be a CEO these days with all the added responsibilities that are coming from substantial increased governance, from the board of directors to the employees to the communities where you operate. So
well, thank you very much. I know it's a complex question, and it could be a very answer ties everything up. It's a dynamic type thing, right, with everybody's involvement. Well, on behalf of LATAM Red, I want to thank our speakers, Jack, Manuel. Thank you for participating this morning and for all your insights and good information. Thank you to all the staff of LATAM Red for making this happen, and from my behalf. And we wish to exhort everybody to send information, questions through the chat or email to LATAM Red. We can answer them back, and to join our sustainability training coming soon with AKFI. Everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rick. Thank you, everyone.